Resume recording. It says we're now streaming live on Facebook.
Yay!
Yay. Okay. So now I will introduce you and we will begin. Oh, gotta let in the guests. Let in the guests. Yay, guests. Welcome to the 14th reading in the Speculative Sundays poetry reading series, where every other week you can hear the poetry of possibilities. Can you see that? See that? I know, I made a sign. We are live on Facebook via Zoom. I'm Akua Leslie Hope, speaking to you from the ancestral land of the Onondaga, also known as the Seneca, keepers of the Western Door in the Southern Finger Lakes region of New York State. I pay homage to the Seneca, past, present, and future, and to my own ancestors, by whose grace I exist and am sustained. This event is funded in part by poets and writers with public funds from the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. Thank you. Speculative poetry, the poetry of possibilities, includes alternate history, cryptids, monsters, cyberpunk, cyberfunk, dystopia, fairy tales, fabulism, fantasy, folklore, futurism, horror, magic, mythology, occult, paranormal, robot, science fiction, shifters, slipstream, solar punk, space opera, superheroes, supernatural, sword and sorcery, sword and soul, steampunk, time travel, post-apocalyptic and weird. It takes all poetic forms, plus one called sci-fi coup. Today's reader, let's welcome Terese Mason Pierre, a writer and editor whose work has appeared in Hobart, The Puritan, Quill and Choir, and Strange Horizons, among others. She's the co-editor-in-chief of Augur Magazine, a Canadian speculative literature journal. She's the author of chapbooks Surface Area from Anstruther Press. I hope I said that right. Anstruther?
Yeah.
2019, and Manifest, Gap Riot Press, 2020. Terese lives and works in Toronto, Canada. Lovely city. Welcome, Terese.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you well now.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much to Akua and to Speculative Sundays. I'm so honored to be here to be reading some of my poetry for you. So first, I'm going to read some of the poems from my chapbook Manifest, which is a chapbook of speculative poems that I published with Gap Riot Press last July. The first poem I'll be reading is called We Watch the Sun Die. We watched the sun die together on the roof of your condo, eating apples that softened in the heat. We gorged the sin, the first and final. Our bodies are soft and naked. Everyone is naked in the streets, miles below, cries reaching in the red, mistless sky. All is illuminated in these draining sands. We kept clarity for a moment too long, forgot our insectoid nature, whining in the ear of God. You wipe sweat from between my thighs. Time has a way of rushing intimacy, and in the same measure, makes us watch trees grow, count our half-lives, skin flushing and hard. No one dares say, I love you, or any other useless verb. Symphonies sidle between brains, the coda that burns black dust in our eyes. The next poem that I will read is called Aliens Visit the Caribbean. There is no leader. We take them to our women. They say, "Oh, so you have finally joined the universe." And we reply, "Careful. There is one nation still using Fahrenheit." To say that we are wholly impressed by their technology is insulting. Instead, a mutual exchange occurs. They give us teleportation. The key is to ignore philosophy when you push the button. And we give them white sand, yellow roti, a container of sorrow. We push and pull and laugh. Once a renegade ray fires and turns a millipede into the size of a school bus. Our children become friends with their children. Compare the quantity of fingers, genital shapes, breathing apparatuses, how to say no. Some of them want to stay. Some of us want to leave. They have never seen one sun set so slowly, how the moon must pull the water for itself. They find their bodies transforming in our air. Their limbs, we tell them, likely tired from travel. Their eyes cannot stop watering. They do not have a word in their language for longing, the pain that cannot be chemically excised. We guide them to the mountains, the falls, tell them not everything is a test. When they leave, they promise to tell their people that Earth was warm, was black, cradles its pain in the sea. The next poem I'm going to read is the title poem of this chapbook, Manifest. Everything here bleeds blue. Iron not tinging the edge of needles, staining gauze after gunshots, but carbon just the same. The man who flew the ship, you call him master, lies supine under the dashboards while he communes with the stars. Nobody who lives here on this new rock owns anyone else, never has. The mountains remind you of Earth. There is a freshness in that they've yet to be scaled, mined for hope, innovated to death. 3 weeks here, and you are no closer to charting the people, forcing a schema into something so lovingly defiant. You like that you can't understand their language, that you find other ways to relay your needs and instructions. You let them touch your hair, something you never let Earth people do. One of them gives you strange fruit, and you bring it to your mouth until master swats it away, opining about poison and gavagai. At night, you sneak away to join them for music under their new moon. Their bodies are their own and each other's. Here, freedom is its own language, a series of swirling joints and bulbs. It is attractive because it is foreign. Also foreign is the idea that you have a body too, that your body can be other people's bodies if you choose it. By the third hour, you decide you want to die here. The man in the ship has supplies to last a few years, but the landscape here shimmers like a cup overflowing. And you can run now. You can even fly. And the last poem that I will read from my chapbook is the last poem in the chapbook called La Diablesse, and content warning for sexual assault. She never walks completely on the road. She wears a dress, a shade of blue that doesn't exist, a color my mother saw when she nearly died, projecting me into this world, and the sky and water turn this godly shade. As a seamstress, an artist, my mother was never satisfied again. This blue woman is best friends with the dark and Flora. We don't talk about where she comes from. We wait for a man to drive by this lonely road at night, spot her, stop her. She wears a hat like a tourist, which she is. One leg in this land, one leg outside a slit, both hands grasping. Every man, I suppose, must compare to the deal maker. I never wondered how close she was with him, how deep she dipped her black toe into the role of vessel, of enemy. I imagine she is fine with the skin on her face. It's leather and fur. The hat has a purpose, see. No man would go willingly. At the sound of his chirps, she casts a spell. Here is where I get jealous. When I was younger, a man followed me home and cornered me behind my father's garage, told me to lift my dress, remove my panties. Within spitting distance of hammers, drills, and acid, I did not comply. And then I do not remember. But perhaps I saw that same blue, the same blue this woman swishes, this woman animals and goddesses around night after night. The spell is in the disappearing, in the wild way he wails through the trees. When I first heard of her, I thought she'd have sex with them before their demise. Later, I realized it was never about sex. It was about power. I want to see her whole face, her victory pose, heifer on high, backlit by the moon as the man crashes to his grave. But there are different kinds of power too. When I am alone, I walk half on grass, half on the street. No one stops me these days. I wear pants. I bottle the lore my mind allows me to think about on days I want to be controlled by a demon. Dream about blue when I want to die. My next poem is from issue 43.4 of Starline magazine, and it's called Descendants. This time, we have enough money for popsicles. One button, and we're off to the corner store, slicing by the trees on our jetpacks. The cashier has a gold tooth, smiles when we hand him the cotton bills. Who gave you that confidence? He asks. June says, walking Miss Shauna's dog, those 9 legs a match for no one. On the sidewalk, bells chime, our mouths full of laugh. Over and over again, I say I want to put her face on the moon, grinning and brimming for the next universe to see. The top of my mouth tingles from cold. My fingers electric where June grabs my hands to swirl me into my mother's past. Hot diamond energy, this girl, leaping over the holosigns and street lamps. What do you want for your descendants? She asks, mouth iridescent. Joy, I say, what you want. My skin sticks to hers. Whole planets hear my heartbeat, the smoke of my thoughts roiling to make me blacker, bold. Oh, but that laugh. The bleeding sky, touching it, on my daddy's shoulders again. She calls from down the street, a good shot through time. A few bursts, and I am with her, holding her sweet bronze, beating flowers on my skin. Her laugh brings me back. Watch me, June sings, and launches. She soars into the air, red-tongued, lock-crowned, and for a moment blocks the sun. I have two more poems to read for you. The first of those two is, or the second last poem, is called Future Saints, and it's an issue of Uncanny Magazine. I'm not sure if it's the March issue or the April issue. Future Saints. But who would pray to you? Supply your canonization. First, all is muted. A green speckled wash, and a balding man has just heard the worst news of his life. And your name comes to him as gently as a silver blanket placed on the face of a planetless child. The cry for help, not half doubting. Second, a black hole opens itself to the uninitiated. Stars and glass still in sameness. The woman finds herself trapped, and your name is patterned in the dripping waves, the illusory scrabble of life, the clicking of tree branches against universal rock. You drag each other behind, cold. Third, everything has decayed. Art that now wears black and reaching forward. There seems to be a fire in both the distant and future, some collective ripped from prestige. They chant your name, call upon you for miracles, the divine ignored for wailing passion, the solitary life, the panting immortality of the sky. And my final poem for you is called Appeal to the Doppelganger, and it's going to appear in a future issue of Fantasy Magazine this year. This poem was originally written as a contrapuntal, which means that the poem is written in two columns, and each column is could be read as a separate poem, but when you read it horizontally, it's also a poem. So I'm going to read all three versions for you so you can see what I mean. Appeal to the Doppelganger. So married, even my fingers rush to study my own face, our face, foil and forgetting whatever magic brought you here at my feet. A sinking house, mud soaked in the moon. You're a moment slower, the right hand in a window, swiping permission from my voice. Who is whom when I cannot tell the difference in hands that look like mine, with teeth along the same lover's jaw, the world of us fading. By skin, every dry groove you carve across the single self, splitting into my labor, lost to your flotsam shadow, double the weight of my jagged outline, waiting for a flit of veil through the trees, the left hand covered in blood, once, then from my family, a timely guess as to who is to blame between the tooled or weaponed knife, a mouth that lies and explores enough force to render memory into ash, into film. Now I'm going to read it horizontally. So married by skin, even my fingers rush to study every dry groove you carve across my own face, our face, the single self, splitting into foil and forgetting my labor, lost to whatever magic brought you here. Your flotsam shadow at my feet, double the weight of a sinking house, mud-soaked in my jagged outline, waiting for the moon. You're a moment slower, a flit of veil through the trees, the right hand in a window, the left hand covered in blood, once swiping permission from my voice, then from my family. A timely guess as to who is to blame when I cannot tell the difference between the tooled or weaponed knife in hands that look like mine, a mouth that lies and explores with teeth along the same lover's jaw, enough force to render memory into ash, the world of us fading into film. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, that was stunning. It's so early. Can we have one more? Can we have another?
Oh, sure.
It is so soon. This is, we need more. We need
More? Okay.
We need,
Okay. I thought I was reading for 20 minutes. I'm sorry.
Yes, you haven't read for 20. It's 15 minutes, darling.
Oh, it has. Okay, I will read.
It's only, you started at 7:07 and it's 15 minutes later.
Okay, I will read 2 more poems. Is that okay?
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Bravo.
Okay, I'm like checking
Thank
my
you.
clock right now.
Thank you.
All right. So these are, I guess, 2 recent poems that I wrote. I'm not really sure what to do with them yet, but I'm just going to share them with you tonight. So one of them is called Walk After the End. A crab follows me home, and I wait for death. 3 days ago, I discovered what it was like to be halved, my wet insides growing a false skin against the warm wind, like leftover anything. I travel halved, one clawed, and greet younger versions of myself. They don't wear shoes, not even slippers, their curly hair reddish, in fact, under the sun. I say to them, write your name at the bottom of your heart, property of stone, a wordless garden, pebbles flattening sweet-smelling grass, a bald-faced moon. They offer to clean the bits of my blood that have speckled the ground and stick to the trees and their black faces. When the wind blows, I say, no matter, I am growing a new body, not searching for my other half, latent, wild. I say I discovered what it was like to have an ocean inside me, permanent gales. I know why I grow out instead of down, clasping another's hand, a hand I do not own. They think I have given them fear, but I have given them shade. I slink away into the sun, grow new teeth, a new sole on my foot, a red shell. And I will also read a very, very new poem called Palms. I tell my friends their fingers look like spider legs. Their eyes are dark too. Some of them remember scraping the salt off my skin when I tried to find myself under the shadow of my own tongue, my cracked palms. I told a man to write an ode to his lover's hands, make it as intimate as he wanted, not to share it with anyone. And I think about the art he chokes and refuses to touch. In the mall, my friend tells me she loved a me who was not my color, her hand in mine, in my other hand, an alert for our reservation. Across our bodies hangs a poster from Tiffany's, the 2 rings, too white to be real in anyone's future. Despite myself, my hands become softer with love. My man is a cook, and I like the way his hands pick knives and slice things open. I like holding you down, he says. My friend says, you know when you're almost finished trapping a poem and you question your whole life? We talk about other people's hands grasping small vessels. We talk about Jesus's hands blessings lighting up the night. Our mothers are religious when it's convenient. I believe in ghosts, and I do not believe in ghosts. The hands genuflecting mold in the corner of my eyes. On Sunday, I ask my mother where the palms come from, and she says, from trees, Terese. And I know I can't trust anyone anymore. I can't grasp a cactus for fun, hit send, then unsend on a slap. I can't strangle myself to death. Thank you again.
Oh my gosh, it took me a moment to find my unmute. And with your last poem, I realized I've been mispronouncing your name all along and you never corrected me. Your mother says Terese and I've been saying Terese. No,
Okay.
she's laughing.
Sometimes I feel like I feel a little awkward correcting people. I know I should. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's Terese.
It's Terese. Well,
I'm sorry. Yes.
no, I feel awful.
Oh no, no worries, no worries. No need to feel awful. It's totally fine.
Okay, so we're going to take a minute away from the subject at hand for me to just do the Akua lecture, which is, especially as an American-born person, I find that our tongues are lazy, and I'm very much into whipping people into shape and very much into learning to pronounce whatever someone's name is the way it should be pronounced. So please, don't let anybody slide. Don't let us slide. Anyway, that was marvelous. It was wonderful. And I have so many questions for you. And I invite the audience to put questions in chat. Someone else said that was so beautiful. They wanted to hear more because we didn't get enough with only 15 minutes and you just gave us a few more minutes. So next time I get you, I'm going to make sure you're not quite so stingy with us. But I have a series of questions for you, and I'm delighted because Terese and I are going to be on a panel where she gets to moderate and ask the questions. So I'm delighted to get to her first. And one of the things I noticed is the element of, in your speculative poetry, the element that I would describe as the surreal. Would you also use that word to describe some of what you do?
Yeah, I think I would. I'm very interested in writing about themes or writing through speakers that are sort of navigating the real and the unreal. Like they're not really sure what's real, what's not real. I think that's fun to do. And it also kind of doesn't really, it doesn't limit me in the things I can write. And I like, through the surreal, I like to write about like transformation and sort of travel and
we felt
things all in different worlds. So
yes, we absolutely felt that. Thank you. The other thing that caught me that you do that delights me, because so often, or maybe too often, I find the speculative rendered in, how can I put this, in like the omniscient third person. I am delighted and wanted to know if you would talk about when you choose to make it first person, and even more exciting for me when it's second person, when you're that you're not afraid to make it the I and or when you say the you.
I like this question. I've never been asked this question before. So the last poem I read, the one where I like referenced my own name, is it's very rare for me to sort of reference myself, my own name and myself in a poem. I like to create personas
Well,
like different.
I was going to say, I don't presume that all your eyes are you.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So
Because a
that's
lot
not
of
what I'm
people
saying.
do.
No, that I'm saying
Yeah.
that versus, okay, in terms of fiction, the omniscient third person, the personal, that your poems, you, especially for speculative, people tend to veer away from
Mm.
first person, um, first person narrative, not necessarily your narrative. And that even more exciting to me, because I've tried it, and every time I do, I feel really empowered when it's second person, when I'm saying you. And a number of your poems are you, they use the second person. And okay, so just explain. I wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Okay.
I like second person. I don't always plan to write in second person. I think it's quite powerful as well. It's so
I
you're invoking the reader, and I like it. I
you
think
stick them right in there.
yeah,
They
it's
kind
and
of can't avoid,
and
they
it's
can't avoid.
you're already painting a picture for the reader, and then you're sort of like not giving them a choice.
I
And
loved it.
like,
I
yeah,
loved it.
I like it too. I tend to write a lot of first person poetry in general. I
Ah,
don't know what to do with the third person omniscience
right.
in poetry. I really
Ah,
don't know. If people out here can write, if speculative poets can write third person omniscience in poetry, props to them, because I don't know how to do it. I'm very much a first.
really? That's interesting.
Yeah,
I thought, okay, that's interesting. I mean,
I'm gonna go through my chat book right now. I think I maybe have two poems that are third person, but
wow, very
that's so
interesting.
straight. This is like, I like this question. I like this question. I never thought about this before. So thank you. I don't, it's not something I'm conscious of,
Oh,
really.
okay.
I never set out to write a poem from a particular perspective.
Ah,
I try to focus on like either an image in my mind that I want to put on paper, or a feeling that I have, that I've been carrying around for a long
see,
time.
now that's so wild for you to say, because I find your work so narrative. You're always telling me another kind of story. So, okay, so talk about that. That's really interesting. I see you so
Yeah.
much as the storyteller, and yet you're telling me the seed source for you is an image, or what else?
Or a feeling that I
Or a
have.
feeling.
Yeah, it's mainly an image. Sometimes it's a line. Like, when you go, like, we're both poets. You go around, you hear, you go about in your world, and you hear an interesting line, and you
Yes.
want to put it in your poem. But I'm very much an image kind of person. The reason I think my poems are mainly narrative, is because I find fiction writing, it takes such a long time.
Yeah.
Proper fiction writing, it's such a
I'm
long
so with
time.
you. I'm so with you.
I
Yes.
mean, I've written fiction before, and
It's
I'm proud of
hard
it.
for
And
me.
it just takes a long time. And I can write a poem in like half an hour. And it's a good first draft, and I'll work on it and edit it and everything. So I try to write fictitious narratives in my poems where the
Absolutely.
I character
We
is
heard
not
it.
me.
It's wonderful. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's where it's not me, it's a different character. I can sort of engage in fiction through my poetry. So
Yes.
that's why they're all narrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we heard that. We felt that. It was wonderful. It was so enjoyable. I loved everything you read, although one of my absolute favorites, because the first time I heard it, I almost cried, was Manifest. And since I've heard Manifest a number of times, and I'm delighted, thank you. No, thank you for reading it. So I'm not saying don't read it, because it is so, it evokes so, you touch on so many things, so many things, so many things. You evoke our whole world and what's wrong with it, and what I hope we don't take to the stars, and the whole it's just gorgeous. It's a gorgeous, and it, but it uses second person in a first person kind of way. So that, I mean, that's the other thing I found particularly masterful about that poem. Um, you know, you let, what was it? You let them touch your hair, something you wouldn't have ever, you know, but that's so first person in that second person
Mhm.
space. That's really wonderful. When did you start writing poetry?
Um, I started writing poetry, I want to say when I was 13. I wrote fiction at first, but then I started writing poetry at 13, and it was mostly through school. Like you go to English class, and your teacher would make you write a poem because it's like the poetry section of your
Right.
English, right? So I started writing poetry that way, and then I would always get either very high marks for those poems. My
Mm,
teachers would really like them, so they would encourage me to continue to write poetry, and so I did.
wonderful.
I started publishing my poetry at 16.
Excellent.
Um, and I just kept going, and I started reading a lot more poetry, because I used to read a lot when I was younger. I would read like children's poetry, and as I would get older, I would like sort of my poetry would reading would sort of shift. And
Excellent.
it's I like poetry. It's great. You can do so much with language in poetry, so
I,
I continue to
well,
write it.
you do so much with language and poetry. So yes, yes. Um, what is your link to the Caribbean?
My parents are from Grenada, um, in the Caribbean, and I lived there for 3 years in my childhood. Um,
Ah,
yeah,
you
it
were,
was
so you were
very,
there. No, because we heard it in one of your poems, and
yeah,
it
yeah.
was it was it was powerful in its specificity. And so I said, this sounds like more than just, you know, I like the Caribbean. This sounds like the Caribbean is part of her.
Yeah, I went when I lived there, I was a child. I wanted to go back actually, as an adult. That's what I want. That was my 2020 plans, was to just travel to,
Oh,
yeah.
oh,
But I wasn't able to do that because it's different, you know, when you live there as an adult, than when you live there as a child. And I was worried about sort of taking the aesthetics of the Caribbean to put in my poetry, when I didn't have, or if I didn't have that sort of strong enough tie.
you have a clear claim.
Thank you. Thanks
I mean,
thank you.
you have a blood claim, and I'm more for encouraging people to um to do it and ask forgiveness later versus, you know, trying to get permission ahead of time. Um,
Yeah, and who would you be getting permission from?
exactly.
So, yeah,
Your
I'm having
your
fun. I'm having a good time.
your parents.
Yeah, I'm having a good time. I love doing it. This is fun. I'm excited, and I'm of course willing to learn, and to grow in this area. And I want to be proud, right? I want to be proud of it.
Yes, yes. It I loved hearing it. I love
Thank you.
so okay, this next question is kind of redundant, but well, it's interesting because you, when you left Grenada, did you go to Toronto? Were you in Toronto? Because I was going to ask about place informing your work. And I was
Ooh, good question. That's a good
so
question.
well, so
You're asking some
well,
great questions.
if you like it, then you can respond to it. So now you got it.
So I was born in Mississauga, Canada, and then my
Ah,
parents, when I was 8, they moved to the Caribbean for my dad's job. So I spent 1 year in Grenada, where my parents are from, and 2 years in Trinidad and Tobago.
oh,
And then I came.
nice.
Yeah, it was great.
Warm,
I
warm
loved it.
places. Look at me, folks. Folks, I am like this. I am in New York State. It is cold and it's spring. So listen,
So
Trinidad,
warm.
Tobago, evoke the warm. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, no worries. And I came back to Canada. My family came back to Canada in December of 2005. And we've been living in Toronto. Yeah. Uh, I okay. Place in poetry.
Yes, for you.
I I have never. I write a lot about people and conflicts, because I find people in conflict is interesting to me.
Mm,
Um, and I often think about the conditions under which I would want to write about a particular city. There are a lot of poets I know who live in Toronto and write about Toronto.
Mhm.
And I always find it so fascinating because they have a very intimate relationship with the city. And it's not that I think I don't have an intimate relationship with the city. It's just that I guess part of me finds it like kind of boring, I guess, to write about a place where you're from. But even though that's probably not true, as I'm speaking, I'm realizing I should probably write more poems about Toronto because I've lived in Toronto the longest in my life, like longer than anywhere that I've ever lived in. But I find
your sources are your sources. I mean, you have a number of places to choose from. It's just that I saw and felt, specific Caribbean references, and I didn't see the Toronto references.
yeah, I'm interested in I guess I'm just more interested in the Caribbean as a site of really tumultuous and fascinating historical significance.
Absolutely.
Like so many people's and so many forces were just in that space for different amounts of time and did different things. And there's so many long and hard legacies there. And I just find it like a more interesting space to sort of go through and
Well,
learn from.
it's definitely less explored. So it definitely merits more attention to my mind and exploration and use. But that's my particular predilection. So you work as an editor, and at what point in your own creation do you edit your work?
I like, okay, I'll just say that I like editing other people's poetry way more than I like editing my own poetry. I will use any excuse to not edit my own poetry.
Oh my gosh.
I find I will spend a long time, like I'll just sort of like really quickly get out a first draft and then I don't touch it for like a month or so.
Oh.
But I'll share that first draft with people who I trust, which is like mainly other writers that I know. And when I go back to it eventually, I start the editing that I do is mainly at the level of the line. I'm very fascinated by couplets. So a lot of poems I write are in couplets. And I think that's just because it's a habit. But in terms of editing my own work, I think I rely on myself to be a different kind of writer and a different kind of thinker at the time when I go back to look at my work. So I don't touch it for a very long time before I go back to edit it. And I also edit it a little bit before I submit it anywhere, just as like a last minute kind of thing. But when I'm editing other people's poetry, I find that I'm a lot more patient and a lot more invested in that poem's or that poet's vision than I am with my own work. And that's actually, I haven't really interrogated that. So I probably should do that.
Well, yeah, but you're living with the you. So I just wondered if any of that process is subconscious or unconscious, if any of that goes, like you said, you put it away so that you don't engage it for a time, so that you're disconnected, so that you could come to it as an other, as a non-self, or is it that you just need that distance from the from the creation, from the image, from the moment, in order to examine it?
I think it's a bit of both. I find that I'm usually very distant from my work. I write a lot. I don't write about myself very often. I find that very weird and strange at times. I admire poets who will just sort of bare their soul on the page. I'm like, I can never do that, but I also don't want to do that, right? So I engage my work from a distance, and just putting it away for some time just creates more distance. And I want to look at it the way any other editor who's not me would look at it. Even though I like the work, and I'm not trying to sort of tear it apart or anything like that. I value that distance, and I think that if I didn't have that distance, it would make it very hard for me to edit my work, but also hard to publish my work and make chapbooks and read my work in front of others and do interviews like this. If I held it so close to my chest. And I'm sure other poets may have like other opinions and they might disagree and things like that, but that's how
this is your moment. So we don't care about what those other folks are saying. So what's your writing routine? Do you have a routine? Or do you wait to be struck by inspiration?
I wait to be struck by inspiration or a deadline.
Okay.
Because sometimes, like more recently, I've been getting like commissions for poetry. Like people will be like, "Oh, can you write a poem for this?" Or we're bringing on poets to do a theme on this, and can you come and write a poem for this thing?
That's marvelous.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So I have to write a poem with a deadline on a theme, right? So I have no problem doing that. But like if it's not that case, where there's no external force of like forcing me to write a poem for a time and a date and a check, I usually wait for inspiration to come. There was a point at which, like, two of the last poems I read that were quite new, that was after a time where I hadn't been writing poetry for about 3 months. Wow. So like November, December, January, half of February, I hadn't written anything.
Do you feel it when that you have those down times? Does that bother you?
Yeah, it does bother me. I get really hard on myself a lot because I wish that wasn't my routine. I follow a lot of poets online, friends of mine who are like, I did a poem a day for June or whatever, and I'm like, I want to write a poem a day, but I can't. Right? It's just not in me. Which is why I say I'm a slow writer. I'm trying to write a book right now, and it's just taking forever because I'm waiting on something. But when it does happen, when I do get that spark, I just write as much as I can before it goes away, because I don't know when it'll come back. It always comes back, but I can't predict it or track it or anything like that.
Oh, you can't strike the flint and it can self-ignite?
Sometimes I might try to go to a place outside or to a particular spot to sort of jog that kind of inspiration.
Right. Yeah.
But that doesn't always work. What tends to work more for me now, I've realized, is reading other people's poetry. It's like reading other people's poetry will make me feel like I want to write, because I'll get so inspired and have so many feelings about the poems that I'm reading. I'll think I should take this energy and go write my own poems.
Excellent.
Which is also what makes me a slow reader, because I can't finish a book of poems because I have to stop and go and write more poems.
Exactly. Oh, I'm so similar that way. I have piles of quarter and half read books for that reason. When did you start writing speculative poetry? Or has your work always included the speculative?
No, it hasn't. I started writing speculative poetry in 2019.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. This chapbook came out in 2020. I just collected these poems that I had. I joined Augur magazine as their poetry editor in December 2017. And I was editing speculative poetry. And then like in early 2019, I thought, well, maybe I should write the thing that I edit. I was already a poet.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing.
Yeah, so I gave myself a lot of freedom in the kinds of things I wanted to write about.
Excellent.
I tend to write about like nature and relationships. Those are sort of the things that I like to write about. But when it came to speculative poetry, I was like, you don't have to write about those things. You can write about, spaceships and the future and dragons and robots and mermaids and fairies and angels and all those
and
things.
and doppelgangers
And doppelgangers and demons.
and body morphs and biomorphs.
Exactly. And I found it really fun. But because in the poetry community that I'm around, is at times very traditional, kind of like that, that commons, or I guess literary type poetry.
Yes.
So when I published my chapbook, I really wasn't sure how it would be received by this community, if they would like it. It was kind of like a second debut, because this is my second chapbook. I thought it was like another debut for me almost. But I've had really good success with it. People seem to really like it, and it's just motivating me.
Well, it's wonderful. So yes, they should. Do you have a favorite type of speculative poetry?
I think I will always like the poems that are about relationships. The poems that are about like people's relationship either to other people or to themselves or to like some other force that's out there. And I know that can take many forms.
Many forms, yeah.
But those are the ones I'm most interested. I like the I speaker. I like the I speaker navigating and struggling through something or in relation to something else. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yes, it does.
Oh, okay. That's what I like.
I mean, it's your answer. It's your, so it's the answer. I'm trying to think what. Oh my gosh. I did not look to see, so I will double check. I will look to see if there are any questions in the chat, because I've just been talking and talking, and no, there aren't. So it's cool that I've been talking and talking. I loved the appeal to the doppelganger and future saints, and Descendants made me laugh. And like I did tell you, I already love Manifest in particular. You have so many striking images and wonderful lines. And I'm going to thank you for being here, because we're almost at the end of our hour. And it's been a delight again. I'm so glad I've met you and gotten to talk to you. Thank you for being here with us. And thank you everyone for coming to Speculative Sundays and hearing Terese, Mason, Pierre. Now, I was always, okay, here's one other thing. I was tempted to say Mason, but then I said, oh, it's Mason. Is that right?
Yes, that's Mason. Yeah.
So Terese, Mason, Pierre, thank you so much for being with us. And please come join us again on April 11th when it will be Jennifer Crow. But thank you, Terese. Be well, everyone. No peace. Bye.
Bye.